Howdy folks, welcome back to Doing Brew. On today's video, we're going to build these really nice outdoor stairs. And they're built out of a combination of precast tread stones as well as pressure treated material. And it's all tied together with large 6x6 treated lumber. This is replacing a very old and not very sturdy set of steps, which were really just stones laid on the ground and wrapped in wood that began moving around quite a bit and became probably more of a hazard than they were a help. So with that, let's go ahead and start digging, start building our steps. Let's get to work. Ready?
Yep.
Now here's a quick before and after of the stairs to give you a good idea of what I'm going to be covering in this video. As you can see, simple tread stones wrapped in pressure treated material with large timbers as the side. And here's a look at the old stairs. As you can see, treadstone with just wood wrapped around. They weren't actually anchored to the ground in any way. We're going to leave the existing steep staircase in place. That's holding together pretty nicely. But up here at the top is really kind of an odd area. There's no clean transition from the stairs to the rest of the backyard. So we're going to go ahead and make a nice platform area here, a nice transition that leads you into the rest of the yard. And then down at the bottom where it meets the driveway, there was nothing previously. It was a bed of gravel. So we're going to go ahead and make a nice wide kind of welcoming staircase, if you will, right off the driveway that leads to the single stones going up the hillside. And these are the plans for the staircase. I used an Excel spreadsheet which actually worked out pretty nice to help me estimate the amount of material and come up with the dimensions for the steps. I was pretty close, but you'll notice as I build this out that I varied from this plan just a little bit. First thing we have to do is demo the old stairs, and as you can see, they're about ready to be done anyways. So we're going to pick up all that old treated material, the tread stones. We're going to try and recover as much of this pea gravel as possible. If you've ever priced out pea gravel, as far as I'm concerned, it's pretty spendy, so we're going to try and save that as best we can. And we're going to unwrap our load of lumber that was dropped off, do a quick inventory to make sure everything that we ordered was delivered, and it's time to go ahead and get started. And the first thing we have to do is start digging. A lot of digging. Over the entire run of our staircase, we dug down about 2.5 feet and about a foot wider than our staircase was going to be. We also ran into quite a number of huge roots that we had to cut through with the chainsaw. Now this is the first run coming off the driveway, and you can get a good idea there to the back of Lamont's legs on how deep we went. And then we had to go deeper still to establish our trench and pour in our first bit of gravel for the gravel bed for the first timber that we're going to place. Now, you saw Lamont tamping down, compacting that soil prior to the gravel. That's very important. And then once you pour your gravel in, you want to compact that extremely well too. You don't want to allow for any settling that's going to put your staircase off kilter in years to come. So you're going to see us using that tamper quite a bit throughout this project, and I can't emphasize enough that that's a really important part of this project, is to ensure that you're putting your timbers down and your steps down on solid compacted material. So right now we're just trying to get that first trench level to accept our first timber. A little bit of trial and error, requires a little bit of patience, but it'll pay off in the long run with a nice, solid, true staircase that will stand the test of time. Now we're looking for a good 6 to 8 inch gravel bed as the foundation for our timbers. We don't want to pour 6 inches or all at one time, nor up to 8 inches. We're putting that on in relatively small layers of about 2.5 to 3 inches at a time, and then thoroughly compacting that gravel and then adding more. It's much more difficult to compact with a hand tamper a large dose of gravel at one time. And we're just about there with getting this first foundational area level to accept that first timber.
Sweet. Level.
Okay.
We're level.
Excellent. All right. Now that we have our gravel bed complete and level, we're going to cut out our nails out of 1/2 inch rebar. I'm going to cut these to 3.5 to 4 feet in length.
All right, there you go.
And we're going to use this rebar to secure the timbers to the ground. We're going to drill out a 1/2 inch hole and then go ahead and with a mallet start hammering in that giant 3.5 to 4 foot long 1/2 inch rebar nail. And let me tell you, that'll take it out of you. But it's the only way to ensure that these timbers don't shift and move around over time.
I think that was faster than yours, huh, bud? I don't think so. Dad was working at it first.
With that timber in place, it's time to work on the one running parallel next to it on the other side of the stairs. We're going to follow the exact same process of compacting the soil, compacting multiple layers of gravel, making sure everything's level, setting that timber in place, of course checking it for level, pre-drilling our holes, and hammering our nails. With that timber in place, it's time to start moving up our slope. Now, as you'll see here in a moment, with that timber in place, we establish a new foundational line as you move up the slope. You want to have the same amount of compacted soil, compacted gravel, but then running level off of the timber that will be below the next timber as you rise up the slope. And then the process is the same. Drill your holes, hammer your nails, and continue to build and move up the slope, establishing new layers and new foundational layers as you move up the hill. Now, you may have noticed that we screwed in the leading edge of this timber with a large lag screw, and then the trailing edge will be nailed with the rebar. So that's an important note to make. You want to nail into the soil and screw into a timber. And here I'm just checking to make sure that we're remaining square and parallel along our run. We'll nail that guy in place.
Woo!
And here we're driving in another 4-foot nail to the middle of this timber. So if you're keeping track, this timber has a screw at one end, a nail at the other, and a nail in the middle, just to ensure that thing never moves. And here we're beginning our third course. So at this point, we're 11 inches above the driveway. And you can see the two timbers below that are supporting this timber that we're getting ready to set in place. Those timbers are level number 2 coming up from the foundational level. Now, we're going to do the same process, compacting the soil, compacting the gravel, and in this case, we're securing the center of the timber to the timber below with a large lag screw. And these are Spax lag screws, specifically designed to be used in heavy treated timbers. But the left side of this timber is on a gravel foundation, so that end will be nailed in place with our 1/2 inch rebar. Now it's time in this project to begin building the steps. And the first thing we have to do is set in the end timber and
we're good.
Ensure that's level. Secure it in place. And then we'll begin backfilling, compacting, and leveling this area to build our first step. And nothing like a little competition on the job site to lighten the mood and keep things moving. Here, Alex just can't keep up with the old man hammering in that rebar. They say I've got old man strength. I don't really know what that means. But devastated, really. Alex still has 14 inches sticking out of his timber, and he's taking a break.
Nice.
And at this point, we're making the turn up the steeper slope. So as you can see, we're going deep here. We're going to compact this soil very thoroughly. We're going to put in a 4-foot timber on top of a 9-inch bed of gravel. We'll secure that timber in with our nails, and that'll be up against, you can see there's 2 timbers there at the end where this timber will be backing into. This timber is the anchor for the entire staircase, in that it's going to have the weight of the staircase pressing down on it for years to come. So we want to have a very strong foundation built up here and a strong anchor for our staircase. Now here I'm just putting in a 2x6, just a way to check for level without having to herc around a larger timber. It looks like we're good and level, and we're going to secure it.
Kill it.
All right, now it's time to do a little bit of math, but it's easy math. I've set a string at the very top of our hill that we're climbing with our stairs. Then I pull that string down to where our stairs begin, and with a line level on that string indicating level, I can see that I have about 32 inches of climb. So a little bit shy of 3 feet. Now I need to figure out how long is our overall staircase going to be that's going to climb that 3-foot area, and it's somewhere around 200 inches, about 17 feet. Now my tread design is overall 32 inches. So with an overall run of approximately 200 inches for my staircase divided by 32, which is my tread length, that comes out to about 6 steps, which works out really nicely because I'll be using the 6x6 timbers as my risers. And I need to climb approximately 3 feet. So everything works out really nicely with my dimensions. Here's a quick look at our progress so far. We're ready to begin the climb up the slope, but before we do, we need to finish out the build of our lower steps coming off the driveway. And to do that, we're going to set up a 6x6, which will be our initial step up the hillside. And then we're going to frame that up so that everything's nice and level timber-wise, and then we can backfill with soil coming off those timbers to look real sharp when we're done. And as you've seen before in previous videos, I'm a big fan of dry fitting things before you permanently install. And in this case, we've got 4 or 5, maybe 6 timbers that we're going to set them all in place, make sure everything lines up, everything's square, all of our measurements work out, and then we'll secure them. In a moment, you'll see us carrying down a large timber with a very shallow angle cut on the end. That was a challenging cut to make, made with a chainsaw. But that will yield a 17.5-degree slope going up the hillside, which corresponds with the slope of the hill. And let's go ahead and set it into place. Here, there we go, that's perfect. Okay, set it on down. Yep. So what we want to do now is stay standing on it. There, 7.5. I'm surprised we got to dig out here a little bit. We got to dig out here about 2 inches. Good thing is that we don't have to do too much digging. Now this timber will be secured at the end with a lag screw, but then it'll be secured also to a timber underneath that serves as an anchor going up the hillside. Now this anchor will be secured with our stone foundation, as you've seen us do in previous builds, and we just did a quick time lapse here so you can see us establishing that level. But remember, level now is 17.5 degrees, going up the hillside and securing that anchor and then securing that top board. And once we get one side complete, it's time to do the other side. And we'll do that exactly the same way as the first. The tricky part here is making sure that as we put in our foundation and our top timber, we need to stay exactly parallel going up this hillside. And that looks pretty nice. And you can see we're already beginning to backfill with gravel down there for that first initial step. And here we're backfilling with soil for step number 2. Now, as I mentioned before, everything gets tamped down and compacted really well, and then leveled out, and then gravel, and then we'll place the next timber, which is our riser, going up the hillside. And just up to Now for all the steps, once I have the gravel compacted, next up is the paver base. And the paver base that I'm using is made by Pavestone. It's a patio paver base. As far as coarseness goes, the paver base is somewhere in between the gravel and the paver sand. But it's an important step to ensure that you're building a stable, level foundation for your pavers, whether you're building a staircase or a walkway or a patio. That'll ensure that everything stays nice and level and tight fitting for years to come. In just a moment, we'll be doing the final step of prep, and that's putting down our paver sand. And for that, I'm going to use a Pavestone product again. Paver sand is specifically designed for building paver walkways, patios, and stairs. Just a quick check with the level here to gauge how we're doing. You don't want to wait until you're at the paver sand level to level things out. Good to ensure you're level or pretty darn close to level all the way up through the different substrates. Now a light touch here with the tamper. And the reason being is you don't want to compact your sand too much. You're just trying to get it level, because you want a little bit of loose sand for your pavers, and in our case the pavers and the timbers, to sit down into, and that way it provides a little bit of grip, a little bit of grab for your stones underneath. And then of course you'll put paver sand in between. Now here's just a quick look at the build of a step. So I have my tread stone in place and a 2x6 up at the top. This is all per my design. You can choose any design you like. Now here's the 2x6 at the back side of the tread, a 2x4 on the right side, and a 2x4 on the left side. And that's the build of each of the steps going up the hillside. Of course, filled later with sand in between all of the joints and the cracks, and that'll ensure that this tread never moves and stays stable for many, many years. Now we have the next area prepped and ready to go for a step, and as we continue on up the hillside, we're backfilling for the step above that. We're getting pretty close to being done. And the final step of any paver project is the application of sand. I like to let the sand sit out of the bag for a couple of hours to dry out a little bit. It seems that fresh out of the bag, the sand's a little damp, and I find it a little bit hard to work into all the cracks and nooks and crannies of my paver project. So I like to let it set out for a bit and dry out. Now, of course, if you're not using sand out of the bag and you had it delivered by a bulk delivery, then that's not going to be a problem for you. So this is just a kind of a trial of patience. Takes a little bit of time. Takes about 2 or 3 applications to get everything in there nice and tight. And the reason being is that you'll sweep in your sand into the cracks. It'll look beautiful. You'll come back in a day or two after the earth has rumbled a little bit and after people have walked on the steps and find that some cracks that were previously filled have opened up. Well, over time, you'll sweep in enough sand that it'll fill all of these cracks and crevices. But it's a lot more than the aesthetics of the sand filling in the cracks and it looking nice. That paver sand, when it gets down in between the individual pavers or the pavers and the timbers, it really locks everything in place. If you can imagine at the microscopic level, all of those little bits of sand and all those cracks and crevices in the sand locking together, it'll prevent your stones and your wood from moving at any point in the future. Now, moving's not really going to be a factor here because we have the front, back, left, and right sides all the way around of our stairs anchored in either by nails or by lag screws. Well, folks, our project is complete. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you have any questions on how to complete your own timber and paver step project, let me know in the comments or send me an email. I'm happy to help any way I can. If you try to tackle this project, best of luck to you. I know you can do it, and I look forward to seeing you back here next time on Brew. Take care, folks.